said, why are they expiring? So wherever she heard was not expiring, she thinks it's expiring. Right? So if I say you kind of, someone said they're an English teacher, just leave me alone today, and I appreciate it. Brought some videos and stuff I want to share with you. And before I even get there, I gotta tell you about my journey into administration, because I think that matters for you. You know, I never would have thought I would have been in this role. I don't think any will. Well, I'll be a transportation supervisor. It's not on their high priority list. I will tell you, be open to anything and everything, and be willing to move. And when you're going to have your downs, you're going to have your downs. You got to get up. There's so many administrators around this county that have had something happen to them, and they've just stayed down, and they've decided, well, I am where I am. It is what it is. I'm going to be who I am. And they don't see that there's so much more if they just pick themselves up. I'm not going to share that story with you tonight, but if you heard my story and you said, okay, he decided to pick himself up, everything has changed for me. I just can't tell you, and I'm not going to tell you now because I want to get into this, because this is so important to me. I love transportation, and you got to have a love for transportation to be doing this. And I do. When I get to work with these drivers, when I first got the federal assistant principal, I was working with all the drivers. Everything was about the whole feeder pattern then, and I got to help them find their subs. I got to work with them. I did a Christmas party with them, and they love that. And I said, oh, I get to go talk to them outside. What's simpler than that and helping somebody, and they give you great feedback, because you're not going to get that as an administrator. I don't think Coach Tyler's getting many emails saying, oh, you're doing a great job all the time. I'm sure he gets some. But I bet he's getting more negative stuff than because he sends it on down to us. We're supposed to do it. So, and now, of course, this isn't going to work. Oh.
Oh no, we had it going.
We had it going. And this is why you do technology over and over.
Did it come up?
It's not coming up.
Go back down to your, go try to do this, the mirror where you do the,
Let me
tell
go
your
back.
settings, yeah.
I don't know why it's doing that. There we go.
There we go.
We just got to deal with the feed. Bus driver basics. Management basics. We transport over 16,500 students every day. That's a lot of students we transport, and that's only half our population. And that number is constantly growing. I think this year alone, we request at least 5 or 6 routes at the beginning of the year. We just did another one in Daphne, and we're already hearing that may be overcrowded, which is crazy. Along with the feeder patterns and movement stuff, we got to think about all those logistics that go into that. And when you're in your school, you're going to have to deal with that little small world. But it's not small. It's big at that moment when you're dealing with those students and their families. Long County travels, we're 17,000 miles a day. At 183 days a year, that's over 3 million miles we transport. We're the 3rd largest transportation system in the state of Alabama. And I'm only sharing those statistics with you for a reason, because we also have the largest land mass in the state of Alabama. Who's our special needs people? Okay, so if I got a special needs kid that lives in Gulf Shores, but his program is in Daphne, it's not that way. But we have to find a way to get him there. And that kid gets picked up very early. I have drivers, and I make sure I get up early and work out, like I'm up at 3:15 in the morning. And I got drivers on the road leaving their house by 4:30, some a little earlier, to get to their buses to start their route. There's a lady that I see her little tracking. We can track all the buses now and everything they do. I see her route, and she starts at 5 o'clock, going to where she's going to get students. That means she was probably near that bus or headed to it by 4:15, depending on where she lives or they live. So imagine having to get up that early, and you're also getting home that late in the afternoon. That's a long time on a bus, and you may or may not have a job in between. One of the ladies is a special needs teacher for us in Alberta. She teaches all day, drives the route in the morning, teaches all day, and drives the route in the afternoon. And her route, I see her at 5 a.m. Her tracking will start popping up on my phone. That's a long day for a teacher in a special needs room. So when you guys get into your schools, think about what these drivers go through. Now, some of them get to go home. They might go take a nap. I would say the majority of them do. We have the oldest department in the county. A lot of guys are retirees, but a lot of them are very smart. They're not just people who retired from construction work and say, let me go become a bus driver. And not that there's anything wrong with construction work. I'm just using an example. We have guys that were air traffic controllers. There's a guy that was a CEO of a 345 Fortune company. There's people out there that are retired teachers. There was a lady who was a lawyer at one time and just left that. She didn't want that anymore and decided, I'm going to be a driver. It's something I like. I can do what I want to do. So there's people out there that you don't know just because they have on their shorts, they're dressed a certain way, doesn't mean that they haven't led an important life, and we need to treat them as such. A lot of people forget about that when you're dealing with your drivers. They get forgotten about a lot. And Mary Long started this job as assistant principal here at Robertsdale, and I love her little story. She said, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, you got to get out there and start talking to the drivers. And she did that, and they really talk about her now. She's done a good job for them, but it took her a while to get her. She had never did anything with buses. She came from Gulf Shores, and Robertsdale and Foley are our biggest headaches when it comes to buses, because we're transporting all over. But she made that work, and I've had 3 drivers compliment her in the past week and a half, because she gets out there, she talks to them, she gets to know them, she works with the routes. We told her, I said, you need to start riding those buses. I know she rode a couple of them, and she just supports them and makes it work. Facts. 70%, 70 times more, it's 70 times safer to transport on a bus. The seats, I'm going to pull these chairs out. Who's ridden a bus lately? Well, as they get newer, these seats get closer together. And so there's a reason for that. It's because they're compartmentalized. The seats are higher. It's to protect the child in that seat. So you'll see some videos, because I've got some crash test videos that you'll see. We want that to happen. They used to be this way, so when that child, if that bus had to slam on the brakes or was an accident, that momentum of that child hitting that seat was a lot greater than it is today on our newer buses. So it's for their safety. It might be hard for you or some husky teenager to get in there, but it's for their safety. And I'm sorry, it was hard for me. It's not hard for you. Every one of our drivers have to go through drug testing. I was drug tested 3 times last year. It's very random. It's not done through the county. It's done through an agency that we have through the state. And these drivers go, why are you calling? Why are you targeting me? I said, man, I got targeted 3 times myself. And I'm not even driving a bus. I'm driving a vehicle. So these drivers are always up. So you'll get the call that morning or the evening before, you need to send so-and-so to go get their drug test, and they got to go do their drug test. And they got to go when you say. If they can't go, they call us, and I've had drivers, I've got this appointment, all right, you go this afternoon, or you go first thing in the morning. We'll work that out. Now, we get the craziest things when we get these calls from people that say, I know the driver's doing some drugs. I had a dispensary call me in Colorado for a driver in Fairhope. And we said, okay, so this was school was starting like the next day. So Mr. 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿, he's the transportation coordinator, he said, I need you to go meet her. I met her at her house. I said, we got to go do this. She said, what do? I said, we just got to do a drug test. We've gotten this call. And I didn't really tell her much else. She started telling me everything. So, people will start telling you their stories. Well, this lady's out to get me. We're out there in the summers, and I bet I ate some brownies or something. She had a whole story. And I said, well, I tell you, if you pop up clean, you don't have to worry about anything. Get you back on the bus this afternoon or whenever the test comes in. Well, she popped up dirty. I always tell drivers there's a couple ways you can lose your job. That phone that you carry and drugs. That phone is the worst thing for drivers. They'll get on it. We had drivers want to film people because they're getting filmed. It's the craziest stuff. Just stay off the phone. If you need to use it, pull over. We constantly preach that. But you know what? You got 300 drivers. Somebody's going to get frustrated. It's a long day for them. They don't think about it that moment, and they pull it out, and it costs them their job, which is a shame, because we don't want to lose good people. We just invested a lot of time in you. You invest a lot of time in yourself. Why would you give that up for something that all I need to do is pull over? I always tell the drivers as well, when we do orientations, hey, if you're having a bad day, call me, take it out on me. I'd rather take the cussing from you than you take it out on a parent or a kid, because then you gotta watch video. It's just a shame. And do they always call me? No. Some of them do. I had a call this morning. I just, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. And that made them feel better. Am I the best listener? No. I can't. And that's something you gotta work on. If that's not you, that's something I know that I struggle with, because I just wanna give an answer. I know I gotta fix this. I wanna be a fixer, and let's move forward. And that's my military background and things like that. But I gotta try to take a step back and get it through. So practice your listening skills when you become administrator. I know that's my weakness that I'm constantly working on. I didn't tell you guys, I hope you don't mind me filming this, because I always want feedback for myself. I got Mazina filming this. This helps me to go back and watch what can I improve on. And I know these braces are something I need to work on. I can feel it coming out now. Local feeder patterns. When you get out there, and you can do it now as teachers, get to know your drivers. You'd be surprised, oh, so-and-so finally talked to me. I get the drivers, they're on duty, and that lady was mean to us, or that man was mean to us. You gotta think about the morning they just had. I know you may be having a bad morning. You couldn't get your child ready for school. I had custody of my daughter. I know the feeling. We always got up for the first few years when she started kindergarten, hey, yelling and screaming at each other, but then she had to get on that bus and go to sleep, because I was driving a route at that time. So I know what you go through, but think about that driver. They went through the same thing oftentimes, and they got to get on the bus 2 hours earlier. We're going to watch some videos now, and I want you guys at each of your tables, when you see it, talk about it, and then we're going to come back to each other. Now this is a funny one, and luckily we have a very good relationship with our officers in the county, and I will explain that later. But this lady gets pulled over for speeding. They'll call me, Chief of Police in Fairhope will call me and say, hey Tony, I need you to talk to all the drivers. I say, yes sir. And I'll send out an email to the school administrators, you gotta get this out, and they'll send it out. Now, are we always lucky like that? For the most part, yes. The county really works with us. The sheriff, Mr. Beawar, was going to Bay Minette one morning. The sheriff called him going past St. Patrick's because of a bus speeding in the Robertsdale area. They'll let us kind of deal with that, and we do. We'll call them, hey, you gotta slow it down. If we constantly get those calls, then you have to do something else. Can you guys hear that? Some of you can hear it, some of you can't.
Uh-oh, this isn't good.
They like this because these drivers are always watching each other. So when this lady gets pulled over, these other drivers go by. And I guarantee you they were calling their boss, hey, so-and-so got pulled over.
Any particular reason why you were 51 and a 40 in a school bus? You know doggone well that you don't let it be speeding down this hour. Speed limit 40.
Oh, Lord.
The speed limit down Dixon Highway is 40. You don't drive a license, please. Would you turn the school bus out?
Uh-oh, looks like she's been spotted by one of her colleagues.
They'll call this one.
You talking about you on your CV?
Yeah, I'm all right. You know me like I'm all right.
This could go on for a permanent record.
Must go down the cell going 8 miles an hour.
No, you ain't going 8 miles an hour.
I know. My bus is over sitting still. It say I'm doing 8 miles an hour right now as we speak.
Well, you need to have your bus checked
I'm
out.
turning this bus in. I promise you.
All right, just hold on.
Now, what do you guys take like 30 seconds to talk about the ramifications, not only to that driver, but to the county? That's what I want you to talk about. You can talk now.
You know, there was one not too long ago that passed David Cox somewhere back in Stockton, the bus driver passed David, they were just flying, and he called and said, he had the bus number and everything. I said, I will call Mr. Pollard and let him know. I said, that's some bad luck to pass a board member.
All right, anybody want to share? Somebody want to share?
We're just talking about the negative publicity of it, period. Not just the other school bus drivers, but everybody else passing.
I start monitoring radios at 5:30. That's just what I do because I'm usually the one out that early. And the guys know that I'm fine with that. But last night we had a bus, had an emergency on the bus. The driver did not call anybody, and we didn't find out till after 6. Isn't that when you got the call, Coach Tyler? He had to call 911. We have preached, if you've got to call 911, you are to call one of us as soon as you get the opportunity. But they're on an island by themselves. I can see how it can happen. This person was dealing with that emergency for at least 20 minutes before someone arrived, is how I understand it. I can see how they forgot. I don't like that they forgot. It's something we have to deal with. It's something we have to constantly preach. But I know that man there doesn't like getting calls at 6 for something he should have gotten a call about at 4. And we don't like that either. So that's a major and if you had an emergency in your room, you'd probably let the principal know right away. They're on an island by themselves, a 13-ton vehicle, it's their classroom, and they're dealing with those other 70 kids, and all of a sudden they had a seizure on the bus or something like that. That wasn't this particular incident, but that's one of the things they have to deal with. And that call didn't go through. It's not good. It's not a good look for the county that this lady got pulled over.
My conversation with Mike Vivar was, I'm glad that the girl was okay. And Danny McDuffie, the principal, was there too. I told Mike, I said, I want to know why the bus driver let us know at such a late time. So everything else being said, everything's good. I just needed an explanation. Why are you going to let something like that, as scary as that, hang out there?
And I don't have an answer why that driver did it, because we're constantly preaching that. We just had that happen earlier in the year in Foley, and I know because of that we sent out several notices, what we can do, memos, stuff to the principal. I know those things went out, and so it's a shame that happened. And I'm not trying to blow fluff up you, but Coach Tyler's very good about visiting these kids and stuff when they have these accidents happen. He'll go in the middle of the weekend. So you got to think about that when you're dealing with these emergencies. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to get out there and do? I had a driver, one of my mechanics, his daughter has cancer. He was over at Ronald McDonald House a few weeks ago. And so me and my wife took him dinner. I said, what do you want? Oh man, just surprise me. I said, no, what do you guys want? Well, we want Moe's barbecue. So we got Moe's barbecue. Now, he appreciated that. And it wasn't about, oh, we wanted some appreciation. We need to take care of him because his daughter has cancer. He had been on deployment in the past. He struggles with PTSD, but he's a great mechanic and he works hard. And so we got to make sure we're taking care of him. So you got to think about those things. You got to think about those things as well when you're in administration. Here's an accident that occurred.
This video shows a
Can y'all see
school
that?
bus driver popping out of his seat and crashing into a home in Carmel. Police say it happened because the bus driver, 73-year-old Jack Thomas, was not wearing his seatbelt.
Today, we sat down with the transportation director of the Greenfield Central Community School Corporation and showed him that video. 24-Hour News 8's Aaron Murphy has his reaction. Aaron.
Well, Eric and Debbie, it's the law for school bus drivers to wear their seatbelts. Numerous transportation officials have told me every year during training, bus drivers are reminded of that. This video is so shocking, Transportation Director Bill Redmond says every driver needs to watch.
I'm not going to show you that again, but that seat's an air brake seat. I mean, it's an air ride seat. So basically, when he started hitting, because he didn't have a seatbelt on, it bounced right out. Coach, you know that. Have you ridden one of the air seat? Like
Mine's air seat.
So you feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's nice.
It's comfortable.
But you feel it. It's bouncing around like a trampoline sometimes. But these things right here happen if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And it's something simple, that little seat belt. Oftentimes those kids, even though there's not seat belts on the buses, except special needs buses, they'll get on I know when they're getting on the bus the first time, they're probably looking for a seatbelt because they're used to it now.
A school bus driver in Seminole County who ran a red light and plowed into a power pole earlier this month is now off the job.
And brand new right now, we're seeing video from inside the bus just as that crash happened. Several special needs students were on board when the bus driver ran a red light in front of Red Bug Lake Elementary, hit a car, and then a power pole. Watch 2's Marina Morocco joining us live with more of this video. And Marina, the bus driver has now resigned.
That's right, and this is a copy of his resignation letter. He turned it in a day after the accident, and on December 11th, the school board approved his resignation.
I bet they did.
The school bus driver tried to take control over his steering wheel after crashing into a car and running right into a light post. According to FHP, it was 66-year-old Jack Timmel who ran a red light and struck a car making a left turn onto the same road he was traveling on. On Tuesday morning, December 4th, 6 special needs students were on the bus on their way to Red Bug Elementary right across the street from the accident.
Everybody all right?
An accident which could have been much worse if those 6 students hadn't been strapped in. But watch again as one of the adult supervisors on the bus swings off the seat and right into the aisle. The bus finally stops after hitting the light post about 30 feet from the intersection, sparks flying as the bus careens right into it. We spoke to a parent at Red Bug Elementary. She watched the video in awe. She was at the school volunteering that morning and knew something was wrong when the lights went out. She knows it could have been a lot worse.
I do believe seatbelts played an important role in keeping all the students safe. It's a tragedy what happened. It's scary, it's sad, it's full of emotion for me as a parent. And I'm glad that all of the children on here walked away safe and unharmed.
Now, some parents did express concern that that bus driver was driving on the day of the accident because back in January he had another red light accident at this same intersection, this time with high school students on board. Nobody was injured then. He was cited for that accident and was also ticketed for this most recent one. Reporting live in Seminole County, Marina Morocco, West 2 News.
Now, as administrators, our first thought is, okay, why didn't, well, we don't know that something didn't happen. They said he was cited. We have several drivers that they don't constantly have wrecks. They bump into mailboxes, that, but it's considered a wreck when that happens. That doesn't mean I'm getting rid of them or something like that. Now, had he run a red light, he was obviously cited. I promise you, all you do is make a call, and we're at least putting someone on admin leave while we're investigating. I don't make that call, Coach Pollard does. And we have investigated those a lot. We have a little more freedom in transportation to deal with those disciplinary issues than you do in the school, which is nice. But it's also, we don't want to just get rid of somebody. We want to research it and find out what the problem is. Obviously, this guy had some other problems. But what I want you to talk about, when that accident occurred, you saw the sparks outside, the engine hit the front end of the engine. There could have been some smoke. What could that driver have done, and the parent on that could have done with those children who are special needs kids?
Back door.
Through the back, right. Get them out of the seatbelts though. They're hard. What is the procedure for evacuating the harness? Same, you just, they don't have to help them out and out and out. Yeah.
What do y'all, who wants to share? Anybody?
Are you talking about as far as getting the kids what to do at this point
Yes.
after the accident?
You have the spark flying outside your bus. Your bus could be smoking. And you got 6 special needs kids. If they were all strapped in, there's a reason why. It's not just, now if they were in their seatbelts, that might just be okay. But what if they had a safety vest on? Safety vest is a harness. We don't want to call them harnesses anymore. I'm trying to get away from that because harnesses are for horses, safety vests are for children. And so, a safety vest. Let's say you had one in a safety vest. You got this spark going outside. You're technically not supposed to leave that bus, but now you may have potential for a fire. And you have a runner that's in a safety vest or a severe autistic kid. there's a lot of things that have to go through that driver's mind and that parent's mind. The parent looked like they might have been hurt. So there's more to it than just, okay, let's evacuate this building. Let's do this. A lot of little variables they have to think about as drivers. This was in Tennessee. Some of you may have heard it. I think 6 children died in this accident, and the driver. Now, I will say, and this is what people don't realize, and it's not, there's no statistic to make this sound okay. Only about 4 to 6 children die a year through bus transportation throughout the United States. That statistic is very good. It's not a statistic we want to have at all, but as far as transporting by car, you have a likelihood of dying if you're in a car than you do a bus. Now that bus is obviously smushed in pretty good. I would say on the bus, I've been to 2 manufacturing plants. There's these steel beams all the way through it. They're webbing. And if that bus was to flip over, it's not going to just crush in. It's just going to kind of stay that way unless something really, like a train or something. That bus obviously flipped and crushed and had some other issues. So those children are built to be safe in the bus. There's a lot of stuff with NHTSA, National Highway Safety Transportation Association, about seat belts and stuff, but there's not a comprehensive study out there to say that would necessarily make students safer, because this is very rare, and that's why they haven't gone to that yet. Not to mention the funding issue, which I don't even want to get into, but just to retrofit a bus, about $3,500, and we have 200 of those, plus all the sub buses and spare buses.
How much does a bus cost?
So a bus, a regular bus, this is also why I like transportation, because you get to do all these little things that you don't actually get to do in a school. So you get to have competition with your vendors, and which is kind of nice. And our Glenn Brown's our fleet manager, and before I think he took over as fleet manager, they just went out and just bought buses. Let's order 75 buses. Well, the county was still paying for those 75 buses for 1 year. So now what we do is try to, what can we do to spread our buses out? So they might say, let's buy, if we have the funding for it, let's buy 20 this year, 20 this year. So that's why you'll see a lot of new buses on the road. And then we can sell those other buses. Oh, thank y'all. And we can sell those other buses. Do we get the full amount? No, we get about $5,000 or $6,000 depending on the bus. But sometimes if we're selling, let's say, a bunch of 2008 models, and I'm just using that example, if we can sell 10 of them to one school system, we get a little more money for them. And so there's all these little things we can do, and then we get to use that money in transportation to do some things like pave our parking lot. Or things like that. There's a lot of things we can do that you don't have the freedom to do in the school. Most of our 80% of our funding comes from the state. It's not through the local school system. That pays for my salary, Mr. 𝐕𝐈𝐴's salary, for the most part, and all the drivers. I think very few of our drivers are locally funded, and that's what we want to do. The state should fund your drivers. Any questions about that?
But how much does a bus cost? How much?
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
A bus anywhere from $75,000 to $85,000.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Hope.
That's okay.
You got me off on a tangent.
Right, and then I'm sure that, like, when we're talking about our special needs bus, it has the extra door and the air condition that gets on up there too.
So,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So a special needs bus could be anywhere from $85,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
In some states, in New York, they have these weird specifications. So have you ever seen those old taxi cabs that have this thing that goes back and forth in the front? Well, they want that on their buses. It's some kind of stop sign that wiggles back and forth. So this 1930s wiggly stop sign, New York will not go away from that. So the company has to design this stop sign every year and put it on that bus, which is silly. It doesn't make sense, but someone in New York says, let's just keep that going, and that's gone on and on and on. Aluminum wheels are very expensive. We don't need them here, but they need them up north because of snow and salt. And so imagine, so that bus, you're looking at $100,000 at least, and that's not gonna last as long as they do here. This doesn't have sound, but if you have an active shooter situation in your school, what can you do? Anybody?
I mean, you lock down.
You lock it down. Yeah. So this guy is not pulling out a gun. But he's obviously mad, he has some road rage, that bus driver has ticked him off for one reason or another. He's driving erratically. That bus is stuck between all this traffic coming in and out. And out comes this guy.
Oh,
no. The windows are not bulletproof. If he had a gun, he could shoot the driver right away.
Who does that? That is so crazy to me.
The driver's trying to pull away. We always tell our drivers if they're in this situation, try to get
oh,
away from
you
the
idiot.
Wait a minute. Is this happening?
Coach, have you seen this one before?
Yes, sir.
I wasn't sure if you had seen it.
Is this where he rides?
No, this guy doesn't ride. There was an old man in one of the videos, and he decided to ride the bus, and the driver's just driving down the road.
He took him straight to the police
So
department.
That was good.
Wow.
But here the driver's able to squeeze out and get out of the situation.
Gosh.
He just got out.
I think he's on the side there, and then he jumps on.
We're pleased to announce the
So all our buses are equipped with cameras. As you see there, that was a front camera. We don't have those. I think we're looking at them, doing a front camera outside the bus, which is what we need. The video systems are very expensive. Excuse me, we have DVRs right now. They used to have the old VHS tapes. And those are such a pain because when you needed the tape, it's not there, and you know special needs. Why isn't that tape there? I gotta have it.
Yep.
And so, but now for the most part, it really works well.
And they're
But
so
we
much
still have those
clearer.
issues.
Used to, it was so foggy and grainy, you really couldn't tell, but now you can really pinpoint what's going on.
There's some neat things out there, but the cost is just, it's not feasible at this time. Where you can do interactive live video on the bus throughout, which is kind of nice, but you're looking at a whole nother cost. You gotta pay for that, so.
Yeah, and AP spent a lot of time watching bus videos.
And this is one like an AP would have to watch.
A 4-year-old boy left alone, there he is, in the Valley school bus, and ABC 15 obtained the surveillance video. Thanks for choosing us this afternoon. I'm Katie Randall.
And I'm Steve Irvin, ABC 15's Corey Rangel, the only reporter with this video. And Corey, we've now learned just how long that boy spent alone on that bus.
Yeah, Steve, here it is again. This video shows that school workers left the boy alone on the bus.
Came
for
looking
about
around the
11
corner.
minutes
Where are my
in the
friends?
school bus. The bus turned on. This video shows the bus on the way to the school bus yard after it left the boy's school. 4-year-old Floyd Smith fell asleep and never got off. Both the driver and the bus aide somehow missed the boy and left him on the bus. About 6 minutes later, you can see Floyd look around his seat and then behind it, appearing confused. A few minutes later, a third school district employee gets on the bus, sees the boy, but does not help him. Instead, the worker goes to the back of the bus and spends 5 minutes installing car seats on the bus. When the worker is done, he finally goes and gets the boy help after leaving the boy alone again.
What an idiot.
And tonight at 6, we're taking...
Should any of those 3 people have a job?
No. Especially that last guy. That's the worst right now.
We had a conversation with him, and
Oh my gosh.
Walk past the kid, did his work, did his job.
So do the cameras, when the bus is turned, even though the bus is off, those cameras are still
they're
running
still rolling for at least 10 to 15 minutes.
after they're off?
Yes,
Okay.
after they're off. Driver, I don't want to just show you bad things, because drivers do a lot of good things. This is one of the good things.
Caught on camera, a 4-year-old boy riding a school bus is seen gasping for air while Manford Public Schools teacher aide Ginger Maxwell is behind the wheel.
I thought he was just teasing me, and I thought he just went follow my instructions and not sitting down.
But Maxwell soon realizes something is terribly wrong.
His sister said he swallowed I think he swallowed a coin.
She quickly pulls the bus over in a safe spot.
I made sure the bus was secure, went back, and grabbed the student. It was just red and just gasping then for air. It was
Here you can see Maxwell springs into action and starts performing the Heimlich maneuver as a child is choking.
Come here. Okay, it's okay. You're going up. At least maybe you'll go up. Okay, got it.
I heard it hit the floor, and then I seen it rolling. And I said,
we call it. She says this is the first time in 17 years she's used the life-saving skills she learned doing seatbelt.
Just get back on the drive then.
Surprised, right, that this was happening.
Is that what
And
the
I
kids
did my training, and I was really making it when I had my training, and it paid off.
Oh, she got it.
Can you hear me, Dad? You hear me? Oh, I think the Lord is real okay.
While she's being hailed a hero by many, Maxwell says keeping kids safe and alive is part of her job.
In fact, I feel like I don't deserve a lot of credit. It was just God working through me, but I'm just glad we got it done.
Jeremy Farinas, Tulsa's Channel 8.
You know, they're trapped, I keep saying they're trapped. They're on the road. They have this happen. You guys in your classrooms, you are trapped, but you can holler someone across the hall. You can have somebody else run and get somebody. There's nothing they can do. Go get somebody. No, you're not sending the kindergarten kid down the road.
Today, a local school bus driver is off the job.
Cameras on board a Seminole County school bus allegedly caught him texting while driving. WestJO obtained that video. District transportation officials say drivers are not allowed to use phones unless it's an emergency. WestJO's Marina Rocco is live in Winter Springs. And
he's
Rita,
going
this
pretty
is the
fast.
first time
It's
he's
not
not
just,
in trouble.
it's not just putt-putting down the road in some neighborhood.
Just last April, the school district also had to affect some kind of disciplinary action against the school. He was involved in a fender bender, and they say he was also done on stone. Wish to obtain footage from this surveillance camera on a Seminole County public school bus. It's rolling as driver Robert Stancheski is seen with a cell phone in his hands. For more than a minute, he appears distracted, losing eye contact with the road, and at one point, even taking both his hands off the wheel.
See everybody Texas. So, I mean, it's not surprising, but it's just surprising that he gets paid to drive and to follow the rules.
Stancheski has been a bus driver for several schools for nearly 2 years. District officials say just last April, he was involved in a fender bender moments after putting his phone down.
Even just like checking your phone or looking down for a second is like completely dangerous.
In both instances, there have been no students on the bus. Some parents saying he's been given a second chance and he's done it again.
Well, none of us want our kids at risk. So if there's someone that's within our school system that's not doing what they should be doing, then someone should step up and take care of that.
Now, in the meantime, that school bus driver is suspended without pay, and next week, school board leaders will meet and they'll decide what disciplinary action they'll take against this driver. We're now reporting live in Winter Springs, Marina Morocco, West 2.
It's taken very seriously. We lost a driver the first day of school this year. Right after our orientations. And they're like a week before school, so we're going over that stuff. The driver that we lost, he was texting over 2 miles going down the road. And because he wasn't paying attention, let this middle school child off, said, "You missed your stop." He missed her stop. And she had to walk back a mile or so to her house. A middle school child in an area that you don't want a middle school, I don't want my daughter walking around in that area, down the main road. So you gotta think about those things, and look, that was a call, that was an easy one. And again, we don't wanna lose people, we wanna keep them. But we can only do so much. You can't fix certain things, and couldn't fix that guy. Deciding that was more important than paying attention to what I'm doing on this bus.
You know what always gets me is those cameras are not a secret. They know they're there. They know where they are. And they still do stuff like that. I mean, that's what always used to get me.
I don't understand because, look, if you're time, put it down. I don't want you doing that either. But I can justify that. I can't justify you going down the road, boom, 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 like this. And neither can anybody else. It's not going to be justified. Any questions about that? This takes a minute to get going, and Coach, you've seen these. But when you see this, there's going to like a couple different scenarios pop up of what happened. And I think this is an active shooter situation. It's professionally filmed. But it kind of shows the thoughts that might go through a driver's mind when these things take place. drivers have a thing about being observant in different areas, in their stops. This is something that's different right here.
I'm passing up my third stop in Augusta Woods, the Collins house, because of the suspicious period troops working around. I'm not going to endanger the rest of the kids. I need some help, please. Hurry up, get on. Sir, can I help you? Sir!
Oh gosh.
Very surreal, isn't it? So imagine that happening. It gave you two different scenarios. I would like to think maybe what would you do? You know, is any situation right? The first one looks right to us, but at the same time, you want to those kids up because they're putting them in danger as well. What would go through your mind when you're out there alone? And that's what these guys have to deal with. We had an incident a couple years ago in a grandmother. The driver was brand new. We had gone over things with her. She got to know the neighbors and all the parents. And the grandmother was very supportive with discipline. So the driver lets the grandmother get on the bus, and the grandmother pulls out a water hose and starts beating these kids up and down. Now, it was her own grandchildren, doesn't make it right. She should have never let her on the bus, is the problem. And that could have been so much worse than it was. But those kids had to see their grandchild getting beat up by the water hose strap. And I know the driver meant well, I'm getting some support here. That's not supportive, and it's not anything we can justify either. And that was a scenario that she thought would be okay. I'm getting some help from grandma. So these things happen.
7 News always investigating. We're asking questions after a 5-year-old girl is dropped off at the wrong school bus stop and is ultimately picked up by a stranger. 7 News reporter Russell Haythorne looking into this. So Russell, the little girl's mother is understandably upset.
Mike, it's any parent's worst nightmare. She sent her daughter off to her first day of school yesterday, her first day of kindergarten, no less. And at the end of the day, her daughter ended up in this massive Waterworld parking lot rather than at the bus stop where she should have been.
Like most 5-year-old kids, Amina is excited to show off her new kitten and her new backpack.
She's very excited for her first day of school.
But something went wrong on the way home from school.
When they called through the radio and they said, we don't have no Amina on the bus. There's no Amina.
This pin dot is where Amina lives. This is her normal bus stop. And this is where she was dropped off yesterday, nearly 2,800 feet from her home, or a half mile on the other side of Waterworld.
The driver said she's not on this bus.
The principal here at Rocky Mountain Elementary admits there was a mistake, a slip-up as he put it. He says he's been doing this for 18 years and this is the first time it's happened. He called it an anomaly and said that corrective measures have been put in place to ensure it doesn't happen again.
The school isn't entirely sure what happened. Just like all kindergartners, Amina had a color-coded bracelet on and her bus number, 38, clearly written on the back of her hand. Yet somehow the school says she got in the wrong line and on the wrong bus. Margie says the way the bus driver treated the situation didn't help matters.
She told people I overreacted. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Not in this situation. Not a 5-year-old being missing.
Are you helping little kindergarten mama by going after her? No. She's panicking. That's her baby. I want my baby where I need her as well. These are so many things that could have gone differently. Who's my, you're adapting. You got, what do you call your buses?
Yeah, we have colored buses, red bus, yellow bus.
Okay, some of them have the animals, the octopus bus, or whatever. You gotta make sure, you guys are key to that. And school is key to making sure you're on the right bus, but then they do slip out of line.
They do. They go sit with their friend.
Yeah. And if it's the first day of school,
yes,
kindergarten,
yeah,
it's crazy.
It is, but and it is.
Really does a great job, and so does Foley. I hear him on the radio. You have so and so. You have this. I love that. Jonathan Ellis is very good about that. He'll stay on that radio. I don't know how long he stays on, but he's always listening, so I appreciate that. And they do the same thing at Foley Elementary too. They'll stay on that radio, get that fixed. But I will tell you, on the south end, just a few weeks ago, we had a driver doing the same thing, and a very seasoned driver. That shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, it's one thing to be able to tell a parent they're on the wrong bus, but you know where they are. But and that goes back to that driver. You know, drivers, like you say, 9 times out of 10 will get them home and where they're supposed to be. But yeah, that's crazy.
Now I'm gonna do one of these because it's getting late. Can I still have them?
Yeah.
You guys mind?
Yeah.
Now they do these crash tests at about 35 miles per hour. Have you seen this stuff? There's a reason why you're told to sit in a seat a certain way, and there's a reason why drivers write these students up who don't. It's not because they're just happy to write people up. Because we tell them to write them up. When we tell them to get some help, and there's, see that kid sitting backwards on the front seat there? His neck just broke. Had he been sitting in the chair the right way, his head might have been a little bruised, but he should have been okay. Now they're showing some in seatbelts here, but disregard that.
That's just 35?
35 miles per hour. See that kid laying down? He fell out of the seat and onto those metal bars that are underneath the seat. The kid that was sitting sideways, I've seen other videos where it rips that leg off.
Oof.
Like it breaks it to the side. Backpack kid. This is why you have to, when they're saying that, you have to address as administrator. Now, if you have that happy, write-up person, you got them in every school, drivers, teachers. I had one teacher when I was at Fairhope High School, wrote 500 referrals one year. Brian Lewis and I were saying, who's going to handle this one? You know, and that's when he was assistant and I was assistant there. And she'd write them up for the silliest little things. They were chewing gum on the left side of their mouth or something. She would make up crazy stuff. But when they do write them up like this, you really got to address it. You got to look at that video. I know it's tedious for you to look at that video. You got to look at that video. And then you find out they're just, if they need retraining, send them to us. We can do the retraining. Are we going to be able to fix all of them? No. You can't do it with some teachers either. They're just kind of set in their mind. And I'm going to skip this next one. When you guys become administrators, think about some things you can do. Everywhere I've been, I try to take on a role. Where's my niche? What can I find to do? When I left Loxley, I was a teacher at Loxley. I love teaching at Loxley. I coached ball at Central Baldwin. I coached ball at Robertson High School. And then I got my administrative degree, and the principal retired. And they stuck me in as an interim as a teacher for 6 weeks. And that was right when they were transitioning the 6th grade teachers from the middle schools back to the elementary schools. And I got stuck with this middle school teacher who was selling meth, and she had meth face. It was craziest thing, and for 6 weeks. But because I kept that situation calm, the parents knew me. Mr. Pollard, their kids were saying she would go out and smoke in the parking lot, all this crazy stuff. Not that you can't do that, you gotta do it the right way. She was sneaking around, they said she's sweating liquor, you could smell it on her. It was the craziest stuff, but they couldn't get rid of her. And I was calling Janae Dawson every day. This is how I handled this situation today, this is how I handled this situation today. And she said, oh, you're doing a great job, great job. But my goal was to keep that situation calm. Oh, it's funny how you lose all your friends if you become administrator in your school. We gotta make some changes around here. She's gone, she's retired. We're not changing a thing. I have people still don't talk to me today. We kept things the same, and so they put the principle in place. You gotta be willing to make those hard choices. But when I went to Pine Grove, what could I do? We started there, back when professional learning communities were big, they didn't have it. So that was my idea. So let's do that. Let's do some scheduling things, some changes. So I brought that. When I went to Fairhope, it was different. I had worked at a Strickland Youth Center and worked with all age groups. So when I went to Fairhope, I was used to dealing with high school kids. It wasn't a problem for me. But I said, I don't want to just do buses and butts. I want to do something else. So I took on RTI. And actually, the stuff I did at the high school at that time, Dr. Merrill was the RTI guru. He was sending people to me for the ideas I brought, and all I did is bring in some elementary stuff, and I kind of tweaked it for the high school. And then I came here. And so what could I do? Well, I wanted to do something. My first kind of watch and you observe when you're in a place. So I said, what can we do? So I said, why don't we do a driver cookout at the end of the year? We called some vendors. Yeah, we'll do that. You're technically not supposed to ask for things, so you got to go about it the right way. It's an ethics issue. Yeah, we'll do a cookout for you. So every time that time of year again, we would love to volunteer at cookout, right, with that. But we did a driver symposium. It was going to be a cookout, and the first thing we did was a hostage situation, a terrorist threats. I called the FBI. I got them involved. We got the county sheriff involved. They brought the giant armored vehicle into the fairgrounds. It was a big event. Hope presented at the first one. She did driver management classes. We want to do things different, give something back to the drivers, and also give them some training. So that's the first thing we did. We got national recognition for that. When I say your life will change if you're willing to take on something you might not have been willing to do, I got a company flying me out, an event flying me out in 2 weeks to go present in Dallas. This will be the second year I presented. I had an event send me out to Asheville, North Carolina to present. I'm going to Miami at April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd to present and be on a panel. You can do so much if you're willing to open up and just take a step back. Don't just say, oh, I just want to be here all my life. No, there's so much more you can do if you open it up and you're willing to take it on. We did a flip bus. We actually flipped the bus over. Tony's Towing came in, flipped the bus over for us. I was rescued from the bus. I said, let me tie me up, and they pulled me out. We did the bus in the water. Did you come that one? Yeah, so
that was really scary.
Orange Beach bought the bus from us. All these divers came in from all these different places, Coast Guard, Louisiana. We had some from Florida. I didn't put that on there. And they were all part of this. Every other year we do ongoing CPR training and first aid training. We've actually put smoke on the bus. If the teachers, like, you haven't been to any of this, have you, Coach?
I've always had.
Because we have this awkward calendar where they got to work, but we're changing that this year. So we're always trying to wait, how can we adapt? How can we get these guys involved? So when we're doing bus orientations this year, at this classroom next to us, we're going to do small orientations. We're going to take the teachers who can never come to this, do this type of training with them, and those drivers who don't get that classroom management stuff class that you guys get all the time, we're going to do that kind of stuff with them on the DISC model. And if you do the DISC personality model, I'll do stuff like that with them. Because we want to always be innovative in our approach to things and find ways to make it work. Be willing to take on stuff that's outside your comfort zone. And I got a couple more things to share with you, but I showed you a lot of bad videos, but there's so many good drivers out there that do so many great things, and they don't get recognized. And some of the silly things we did, I started doing Christmas cards. Did you get your Christmas card this year?
Oh, I did.
We sat over there and we bought peppermints. We put peppermint on the card, and we went delivering Christmas cards. That's something we've tried to do the past couple of years. I want to add birthdays. 300, 500 plus drivers, but I'm not there yet. You know, take your baby steps, pick your battles, do what you can and can't do. but find a way to add to it, constantly make things better.
When you do your job for a reason, not just the money, that's a good thing. That's a good feeling. And that's how I feel about my job because of my kids. When it comes to my students, I call them my babies. I'm a real, real big part of their life. So I'm watching them as they grow up and just loving the person they turning into, maturing into. It's a lot. It's like they're one of your own. Hi, my name is Aisha Miller. Welcome to my office. Oh, my typical day as a bus driver, I'm up 3:30 in the morning. I'm gonna get dressed. I gotta be work by 5:15. Early in the morning. First thing you do, you're gonna clock in, you gotta go down to that bus, you gotta pre-trip your bus. Every time we leave out on the bus, you're gonna cut on your lights, you gotta go out and check those tires. You do inspection from outside the bus and inside the bus thoroughly to make sure that everything is okay before you even go out on the road. What started me to become a bus driver is watching my mom. It's my mom's a bus driver and me being on the bus with my mom. By me being here so long, I had some of my kids since pre-K all the way up to high school. So it's like, I don't consider them my students. Those are my babies. I have some kids now that's grown, 20-some years old. And they still see me and be like, Miss Aisha, Miss Aisha. Oh God, it just melts my heart that I'm still remembered. I'm very attached when it comes to my kids. I'm very, very attached. I'm playing mommy role plus bus driver role. Cause I'm not only a bus driver. I'm tying shoestrings. I even got hair on the bus for my babies. You gonna hear a name about 1,000 times a day. All day long you hearing, Miss Aisha, she looking at me. Miss Aisha, she wanna be my friend. Miss Aisha, if you can't take that, that's not, God bless is not for you. And then think about when you get home, if you got more kids.
When I see Aisha, she always smiling. I never see her upset, so she come to the shop, to bring a bus and always be with a smile.
It's more than just a job you going to. You are doing more than just sitting behind the wheel. You got it, your heart is in it. People don't really see that. They just see you as a driver. But it's more than that. It's more than just driving.
She's had the same route for several years. She comes in on time every morning. She's ready to go get her babies. That's what she calls them. You really get to know your children and care about them. And she really does love her kids, her babies. I think that's just Aisha. That's just her.
I have trained a student life for being so stayed in trouble at school all the time. Every time I come to school, I'm in trouble. And you sit down and you have a chance to talk to that child. And when you change a child's life, I'll never forget, he ended up on the scholarship, football. I was so surprised and so excited. And what really touched me, he asked me to come with him to sign off on his scholarship, to help sign out on his team. That, oh my God, I cried like I was a mom. That man still touched me to this day. That I was able to be a part of his life like that just by talking to him in the mornings and the afternoon, telling him, you could do better than that. I know you could do better. And that he sat there just knowing that he listened to me. That he was actually listening. That's a loving feeling.
Educators, period, can change the world if you choose to do so. And when you go into administration, you're going to have to find your niche, decide what can I change, what can I, you probably these grand delusions of what's going to happen, and it doesn't happen that way at all. And that's okay, because then there'll be something that fits. I want to just a few more minutes with you and just share some stories. I always like to talk about things that help me, and this is what the heart is for. So I'm talking about duty, courage, and persistence. Anybody heard the story of Lynn Howe? It's the neatest little story. So in the Beijing Olympics, Yao Ming was a national hero in China, 7'6", and the host country walks in last. So it's a big, proud event. As a matter of fact, China spent over $100 million just for the opening ceremonies for the Beijing Olympics. But then this little guy's beside him. A lot of people thought it was his son. But see, Lin Hao had a sense for duty. And Lin Hao's duty, a few months before, there was an earthquake. 70,000 people were killed in the earthquake. Lin Hao was in his room when the building and his 30 other classmates were crushed underneath the falling building. Lin Hao somehow squeezed out, and then he heard some noises. So he went back in and he was able to pull somebody out, and he pulled him to safety. Then he heard a little more, so he went back again, and he pulled the person out to safety. And after that, they asked Lin Hao, said, why did you do that? You were safe. And Lin Hao said he was the hall monitor for the week. That was his duty to serve that week. Your duty as administrator is to serve. What you choose to serve are these students. I hate sometimes when I have to make decisions that are uncomfortable. I don't like them. I don't think anybody does, but you're going to have that sense of duty to do what's right. I had to do something this year that, really crushed me. And I didn't want to do it, but I had to do it because I felt it was for the safety of the county. And that was my sense of duty. I served in the military and National Guard, and there's always a sense of duty with the National Guard. But Lin Hao's sense of duty during that moment was he was the hall monitor for the week in his class. Sometimes you're going to have courage. Anyone ever heard of Demosthenes? He was the best speaker of the ancient world. Does he look like a Greek god or anything? No. He was frail. He was fragile. Many people think he had a speech impediment, kind of like me with these braces. So it wasn't very good. But Demosthenes had courage. And so when Demosthenes was 7, his father passed away. His mom had died at birth. And then he was left to his caretakers, which were actually his uncles. You think your uncles would take care of you. See, his father had owned a sword business, and it was very wealthy. So he left this money for Demosthenes, the land holdings and everything, and the uncles were supposed to take care of him, educate him. But they didn't do any of that. They just demeaned him all the time. And it wasn't until Demosthenes was 16 and he went out, and he was going out on the where we walking around Greece, and this guy sees him and he says, why do you walk around like that? Why do you walk around with your hair all messed up? Why do you walk around not taking care of yourself? Do you not know who your father is? And Demosthenes started listening to this old man telling this story about his father had left this, that land is yours, this is yours. Demosthenes had to make a decision. He could be courageous and fight for what was his, or he could just settle into his life. So Demosthenes started doing what he should have done. He started going out and say, what can I do? So he had to educate himself. First he started educating himself. He would go to theater, he would go hear speakers speak, and he talked with a stutter, so he would do crazy things, like he would put pebbles on his tongue and he'd give speeches, blah, 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 until his speech came out better. And then they didn't have microphones and stuff back then, so he would go to the beach, and with the waves crashing against the rock, he would give these verbose speeches, and he constantly practiced his craft. He essentially became a lawyer, and back then in ancient Greece, you had to represent yourself. Imagine going up against your uncles who had demeaned you all your life to have the courage to defend, and he won. Now, they had pretty much spent all his land holdings, all his inheritance, but because he had educated himself, everybody would come to him. Man, why don't you write our speech for us? Why don't you help us? And he became very wealthy doing that, and he actually became the best orator of the ancient world. And finally, you got to be persistent as an administrator. Dashrath Mandra, has anyone heard this story? Was very persistent. They had this, if you see the road right there, that used to be a mountain. And it was craggy, sharp rocks, and you could either go over the mountain to get to healthcare and schools, or you could go around the mountain, which was 70 kilometers. He was working, and his young wife was bringing him food one day, and she fell and injured herself. He had to travel 40 miles to get her to health care, and on the way there, she died. He decided, I'm gonna carve a path for my town, so we can get to health care within 1 kilometer. We can get to education within 1 kilometer. He spent the next 22 years chiseling, literally with a hammer and chisel. He didn't just chisel because he had to sell his 3 goats to get the hammer and chisel. He would work. He would go farm and then at night go do this. He had to be persistent. And when it was done, that's literally what it looks like. That's the picture. 30 foot wide, 25 foot deep, 365 foot long. And he did that in 22 years just because he remained persistent. As administrators, you're going to have to be persistent. You're going to have a sense of duty, a sense of courage. And I think if you do those things from the heart, you're going to be very successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Tony about?
Rocky.
You know, I think, of course, Tony said a lot of really good things, but I think as administrators, that part about supporting the drivers, you know, it is unlike classroom discipline where, you know, you may have a teacher or other witnesses. When those drivers turn in those disciplines on the bus, sometimes it was real easy to just, you know, push them to the side and say you would get it to it the next day or the next day, but that student's still on that bus. And so that really was, if you didn't have an AP, that really was a struggle. But it really is important, you know, to support those drivers. And that one lady right there at the end, you know, those are the kind you don't have discipline referrals about. They take care of it and the kids respect them and know them. But I think as APs and administrators, you know, to be able to support those drivers in a timely manner and help them out, because like Mr. Pollard said, they're out there by themselves. So it's a difficult balance for them and administrators.
You have my card if you want to take it with you. Have any questions or anything you want to do? If you want to get your bus license, we're always looking for drivers. Nobody? No pickers? Okay, I understand. Will Duncan became assistant principal, and they said, oh, I need to go get my license. He went and got his license. The head principal at Foley High School drives, which is nice. Any questions? Okay.
All right.